Hello, hello, beautiful souls. Thank you for joining us here today on the Heart of the Soul podcast. My name is Amana, and I'm so happy that you're here. This is a space where we explore what it means to be wild women walking upon this earth. We connect through the ancient ritual of storytelling, sharing about that which is often unseen and unspoken. It is my deepest hope that soaking in these stories may inspire you to uncover your own innate knowing and center you into a more embodied and alive version of your beautiful, unique self. Today is January 21st, 2026. Our moon is currently waxing towards our next full moon in Leo on February 1st. I am delighted, excited, and a little bit nervous in the best way possible to have the incredible creatrix Lisa Lister here with me today. She has been crowned the defender of female awesomeness by Cooler magazine, as everything Lisa creates is an invitation home to ourselves. She invites you to your own voice, your rhythms, your own reality, a reality that is remembered and respelled by you. Lisa brings into the light, the wild, the unseen, the silent, the messy, the ones that history has overlooked. Her work explores power, identity, sensuality, creative self-expression, esoteric traditions, and magic to create worlds where women take up all the space they deserve. Yes, yes. And I have read these three incredible books by her, and I'm sure we're going to get into some questions and topics here. For me, I was introduced to you by a coworker. We were working in a hospital at the same time. I was a nurse, she was an OT, and we both were one of the only, or the two only people in the hospital that did Reiki for patients. And she was like, "You have to read this book." And I was like, okay. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I had like heard some about the witch wound and all of that, but hadn't really like dove in the way that you do in this incredible magical book.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank you. And also just thanks, but I just love hearing the stories of how she finds you because she's a little feral situation, that book. Like she's her own feral beast and I love her for it, but she will find a way. And I love that. Like and it's always through beautiful women sharing with other beautiful women. So that always makes my heart happy. So thank you for even starting there. That's gorgeous.
yes, of course. And yes, I have shared this book with other women, and I've used this book in circles and read from it. And it's just, it always, just hits in the heart, in the womb, in our mother line, like feeling that ancient connection to this word. And yeah, I'm super
Well,
excited.
that's what she was created for. So it always makes my heart so happy. That's exactly it. Like for circles, for us to create our own, for us to call in our own communities. It's like, yes, this is thank you for my own like little pat on the head. Like, well done, Lisa. You did a thing and it's working. Good work.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. It's amazing. Did you always like know you would write books, or when did
Oh.
writing books come into your
Oh, I've always like I'm obsessed with journals. Like I've kept a journal
Mhm.
since I was like really, really like as soon as I could write.
Yeah.
Um I was keeping a journal, like I was diet, like, but it wasn't actually a journal of what was happening. Like it was a journal of what I wanted to happen. Like it was much more fun. Like the existence that I was creating was way more interesting. Like, um, yeah, layered and fun, and there was more stuff happening that was actually happening in my real life. So, I've always had that kind of capacity to share story, but to also recognize that, oh, we get to respell anything. We get to respell it. So like I got to respell mine through telling my story in a journal, which was embellished, which was bigger, which was much more exciting than the life I was actually leading. But
Mm.
gave me a skill set that meant that yeah, and then I just wanted to become a journalist. And so I was a journalist and then wrote for magazines, women's magazines here in the UK and in America, and now write books. So yeah, it's always been a love. It's words are the written word. This speaking out loud business is not my It's not my favorite thing to do, but right, but I'm grateful that I get asked. And so when I do, I show up and practice in the hope that it gives permission slip to other people that find that like a little bit uncomfortable to feel like they can too.
Totally. Yes. I mean, I started this podcast 6 years ago, and partly because I had a really hard time finding my voice. And I could also
Right.
write, but my spoken voice, it's like such a, ooh. And so I did all this like throat chakra stuff, and
Lovely.
I challenged myself to start a podcast so that I would have to speak out.
Love that. I
Yes.
love that. And I think that's just it, isn't it? Like in one of my oracle decks, I've got the Pythoness and she's just this woman that speaks from the belly of the earth. And when we trust that, like I've realized that that's what I have to just go with is like
Mhm.
because this one will you know we've gone through lifetimes, many of us have gone through lifetimes with that held so tight. Um and so, as part of the healing, it's just trusting that Pythoness voice, that voice from the belly of the earth, from our belly of our earth, this body, to speak what we hope. Wow, that's always my intention before I come onto a
Yes.
call with you, before I start a conversation with anyone, is the hope is that whatever's moving through is what needs to be spoken, and I have to trust that because otherwise I'll be very quiet.
Yeah, yeah, me too. And there's been many times where I've like recorded a solo episode and been like, oh, do
Right.
I really want to publish this? And it's just like me talking for 40 minutes. Is that really? But then I do, and it's like, oh,
And
it's
how do you? Do you
a
just literally
battle.
do it anyway? Like you feel
I,
that and then you do it
yeah,
anyway.
I feel afraid
Awesome.
and I do it anyway. Yes.
Yes.
I'm like,
Love
what's
that.
the worst that could happen? Like, yeah,
Well, and what's the best that can happen? I think sometimes we
yes.
get so caught up in that. And again, programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Programming, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
what's the worst that can happen? Actually, what's the best thing that could happen is that someone listens to that and goes, oh, like can gets
Yeah.
to sigh like a deeper sigh that day, gets to feel like their shoulders relax a little bit because they've heard your truth. Like, come on, not to
Mm-hmm.
love about
Yeah.
that. We're so lucky to have each other doing this for each other.
Yes, yes, inspiring one another to
Mm.
keep growing and showing up and being our
Yeah,
full
right.
selves, like you said. And so the other day I was in this group of women and we were talking about how, people are like, oh, you're so full of yourself, like in a bad way. And it's like, well, who else am I like full of?
Like
Like,
I literally have a Substack called Sourced, which is for women who are full of themselves, and you better be full of yourself. Like, who else are you going to be full of? Like, you want to be full of like desire, of passion, of like creativity, of like all the things. Yeah, yeah.
yes, yes,
We can go down a whole route with that one, that's
yes,
for sure. I love
yes.
it.
Okay. But so tell me, what does witch mean to you? The embodiment of witch and the word witch.
Oh, it's a good one. It's a good one. I think like the definition always as well, and I always want to head this up, right? The
Yeah.
definition is personal to each and every person, right? So why I'm so passionate about it is because it's like in terms of that phrase you just said, like women who are full of it, right? And that's a derogatory term, obviously. And
Mhm.
it's the same like when a word has been used against us, like so much in the past, like, as which has been, and like much of my work is about like reclaiming words that are phrases, terminology that's been used in a derogatory way, predominantly
Mhm.
towards women. But
Mhm.
so when so which specifically, my definition is a woman, a human who's in their body, who's in their power, who remembers their magic and remembers that they are magic. Right? So you remember their magic, this magic that's in them, but they also remember they are magic, you are magic. And like because it's so often used as this insult, slur, and or to perpetuate fear in others, it's such a dark. In the book, I mentioned that there was this really beautiful lady, and she was like, "But Lisa, I don't want to be a witch. I just want to be a healer, please, because that doesn't feel so dark and scary." I totally get it. Like I totally get why you would want to choose different words, but like, when we can reclaim like something that's used to evoke fear in others. I think well, I know for myself that it's helped me reclaim the facets of me that are powerful, Like, so I am a powerful woman. I'm a witch. I'm a woman who's in tune with my cycles, like the cycles of my body, the cycles of the cosmos, the cycles of the moon. And then, like, I trust myself. Like, all of these things that they want me to be fearful of are the things that are my magic and my power. So they want me to be fearful of my magic and my power. They want me to be fearful of recognizing that that Roman calendar they've got us working on, that don't work for this one. That don't work for many of us. But actually, when we
Mm.
remember our rhythmic nature, when we remember there's ebb, there's flow, there's death, there's rebirth, when we remember our magic, when we can remember in our bodies what we are capable of, which is creating whole, entire, mother loving universes if we want to, we recognize ourselves as a force of nature. And we remember who we actually are. And we remember that power and that magic. So that's what witch means to me. And that might be very different to what it means to you or to anyone listening. And that's totally cool too.
Yeah, yeah. I love the reclamation of the word witch for
Right.
myself. And like it also makes me think of the word cunt. Like for me, that was
Yes.
another big like,
Mm-hmm.
like no, not in like a negative way. It's like my beautiful cunt and like this
Yes.
magical portal of life and
When I
death.
call
And
someone, it is a total term of love. If you
yeah.
are, if I call you, it would never be like what you get to be soft and juicy and creative and yummy and delicious. Like, oh my goodness, you mean my favorite person.
Yes, yes, yes. So I, like you said, it's so important, this reclamation of these words.
Mm,
And to also, I am a birth worker and a death worker.
right.
And so like
Hmm.
midwife, even, like that word, so many people in certain areas like look down upon and try and like push them down as these like negative, dirty people who don't know anything. And I'm like, yeah. So
And do you still come up against that now?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Someone
Yeah.
asked me the other day about, they're like, oh, don't you think women have come so far? I was like, I think we did. And now I think we're going backwards. Not us, but I think society and culture. Like, I think there's
Yeah.
been, like, there definitely has been like oh, yeah, we love that. Oh, but what we'll do is we'll make that really okay until it's not. And then we can completely discredit it. And we'll just completely start those witch hunts all over again.
Yeah, yes.
Hmm.
And you speak about how although your mother did not teach you like the witchy ways of your bloodline, that your grandmama would, and she would do it sort of, don't tell your mom in private. I'm wondering if there's some practice or memory with your
Hmm.
grandmama that you could share about.
Yeah,
Uh,
bless her. Like I've got a picture of like my mum and my nan on my desk right now. Um, it's not that my mama was in fear. Like let's be
mhm,
clear, right? Like she was very like
right.
I'm from a lineage of women who are magic. Like and I believe we all are magic, but I know like I'm from a family of traveling women. Um, and these women were magic. But my mama was just really super fearful of people knowing about it. And I get it. Like, so but she was this incredible sky reader. Like sky reading is essentially astrology, right? But it's less about the angles and the degrees and much more about how your body feels when the moon is doing a thing, when that planet is aligned with that star and what that alignment does to your body. And so that's kind of where her magic sat. And she had this capacity to see, right? And so I totally get why she had a fear of it because if you can see what's not being said, if you can see what's not being shown, and of course you have to practice some fierce discernment. She also wanted to really fit in, and I totally get that too, as a woman of her in her generation. But my nana definitely, she was much more of a kitchen witch, I'd say. So she'd make tinctures and she'd make herbal remedies. And one of the so how when we talk about any of that stuff now we always have to put like a disclaimer that's this long, like, well, this one, please check all these things, and absolutely right, perhaps please check this, make sure you're certified this, yada yada yada. Like my nana would like just put stuff out in front of me and just be like, well, we'll see, won't we? Like, and I'll be like, is this meant to go with this? And she's like, we'll see. Like we'll see. And what it did was, and I'm sure I'm hope anyway, she would have stepped in if anything was a little bit like too dangerous. But what it did was allow me to trust myself, allow me to trust my intuition, allow me to trust like, oh, well, I don't know what that is, but I sense that that goes with that. And I was able to build up a level of self-trust that I don't think I'd have been able to build up if it wasn't for that. But yeah, she was awesome. She like people would come to her home for all sorts of yeah, remedies and little charms or and even like she would always read cards, like their palms and the cards. So I've always been around all of that sort of stuff too. So
Beautiful.
yeah, fun times.
Yes, I grew up in a like non-spiritual, non-religious household. So for
Right.
me, it wasn't until I was like in my 20s that and still even from the culture, I had like, ooh, tarot cards or oracle cards are like bad or scary or witchy or something. But in
I
my 20s, I was like, ooh, no, I'm drawn to them and
magnetized to them.
yes, yes. And I feel the magic and light and the beauty
Yeah.
within them. So
Well,
yeah.
it's so beautiful in the work that you do, like to recognize it. And that's, again, that's another thing, isn't it? To recognize that there is dark and there is light. Like there is a dark to them, there is a light to them, there's a dark and light to everything. So
Yes. Yeah, speaking of which, I was going to mention you are a Scorpio, right?
I am.
Yes, and I am
Got a lot of
too.
Scorpio placements.
Yes, yes, I am also a Scorpio born on
Yeah.
November 20th, and so
Yes. Oh,
like
cool.
yeah, feeling the depths of the Scorpio and how we can just some people are like, oh, not ready to dive deep, and then other people are totally game to go there into the darkness because
Right.
both hold such gifts.
Yeah. And I think just as a Scorpios, it's just we're more aligned to it. That's all. Like there's almost like I don't know any Scorpio that isn't, and so or hasn't got this really like gorgeous dark sense of humor as well. Which I
Yeah.
personally am a big fan of, that a lot of people can't handle. So you have to find others Scorpios that can.
Yes, that you can have those moments with for
Yeah,
sure.
right.
So, speaking of reclamation, I remember
Mm.
being so like it was such a like mind explosion to understand who a virgin is really.
Mm.
And you write about this in Witch
I
and
do. I do.
yes.
I do. Well, you want me to explain or
Yeah,
share?
please.
Well, okay.
Yes,
Well,
yes. I mean,
explain.
I've
It's
read
like
it,
it's
but
a
not
share.
everyone listening has read your book. So,
Right.
please. Yeah.
Well, I think what we're told a virgin is someone who's sexually untouched, right? A woman who's sexually, well, anyone that's sexually untouched, basically. But it doesn't mean that in the way we now understand it. I think, well, there's many reasons as to why that is, but originally it meant a woman unto herself. So a woman that's not owned, not been given over, like she's sovereign. So she's a free woman. She's a woman not claimed by a man, a woman that belongs to herself, a woman outside of patriarchal construct and contract as well. So I think in its oldest sense, it means not owned, right? It
Mhm.
means like not defined by sexual access, not orientated around being chosen because you're self-defining. And that's the bit I kind of took away from it was like, oh, right, yeah, all of these ways in which um like we're told we're free, but actually it's unless you belong to yourself first and foremost, whether you've got lovers, whether you've got lovers or not, like being able to recognize how to show up for yourself, how to be a woman, like for you, like that woman who's full of herself, full of you, like so that you know who you are. Then, like you can get into like then it becomes relational, right? But that awareness of the thing that we're told, oh, it's that beautiful, pure, clean, like it's all very white and very, young and yeah, the very puritanical sense of what virgin means, and so we've been told a really good story that we are having to retell because we've remembered, And when you
Mm-hmm.
remember that this is the origin story of it,
Mm-hmm.
again, you wouldn't work out why they fear us so
Right.
much.
Like, I mean, even just that, like, history is his story, and
I know, it's
reclaiming her stories, that,
oh, but when you say that, people are like, "Oh, I can't believe you keep saying that." You're like, "Too right, I keep saying it. Too right, I keep saying it because it is her story. Like we have to start writing ours."
yes, yes, absolutely. And you say that women going through deeply spiritual initiatory experiences are commonly labeled as like crazy and hysterical.
Mm.
And women are often pathologized and medicated to like sedate the magic that might be emerging, right? Like, why, why?
It's a whole, well, there's so many layers to this as a concept, but as a truth.
Hmm.
I think if you start with that being a woman unto herself, right? If we start with what freedom, like we're told freedom is a thing. And so if you were to be that woman unto yourself, we then have to look at what freedom means, right? So freedom right now means like still for many, many, many women hinges on us being chosen, us being liked, us being validated, being visible, being heard, being desirable. Um, and I think that then becomes so when so when we remember that becomes when we're remembering like how to trust ourselves, what it is we know, and then we act on those things when because I think that's what freedom feels like to me is being answerable only to me and she. Right, like that's the deal I've got this lifetime. I am in relationship with like a hot Viking. I'm in relationship with cool people all around the world, and I am only answerable to this one. She is me, I'm her, and that's how I know I'm free. But I have to
Hmm.
practice that on the daily. That's how I have to trust myself, and that's how I have to act on what I know and what I see versus what I'm being told. And I have to choose my desire over the approval of others. And look, that's very rare. And that's why. So if you recognize, like if someone recognizes that, it's often why um, women who do claim it are they're mythologized, they're pathologized, they're cancelled for the most part, they're
Hmm.
silenced. So when and then so then there's the other part when we're going through this deeply spiritual initiatory experience, which is almost like when we wake up. And I know I'm blessed that many women have shared, like when they read this book, when they read any of my books, for instance, there's a sensation, there's a something that is remembered through their body,
Hmm.
and that can look like madness on the outside as you remember that. To other people, that can look like crazy and hysterical, right? And that's because when we're moving through those deep spiritual thresholds, the parts that are labeled crazy, the parts that are labeled hysterical, are our soul. I think, like our whole soul, like in motion, and like we're in the dismantling process, so we're just taking like we're having to like unravel from stories and identities that aren't ours, like we're having to make room and space for like the emergence of a more real, of a more true self. Like it's not about self-improvement, it's not about creating something brand new, it's not about being someone else. It's just about being more realer and true. This more real and true, full version of all your parts, the light, the dark, the bits you've been taught to be ashamed of, the bits that you've been taught to blame and that are wrong. All of those parts, when we get to be full of all of them and for them all to be present at the same time, our soul can then speak through like these sensations, these dreams, and we're in this body, we're feeling it all. There's dreams, there's disruption, and there's no logic, no logic, no interest in logic, and that's the hard bit. I'd say that is the hard bit when you're in a world. We live in this world, a culture which doesn't have rites of passage. Like when they took away our rituals, when they took away our rites of passage, they did take our power. right? So
Mm.
those spiritual initiations, those experiences are routinely misunderstood. So when we're coming into ourselves, when we're having these amazing dreams, when we're recognizing our intuitive hits are coming online left and right, when we're seeing things in our peripheral vision that we're not taught what that is, like what is that? And those things feel mad and crazy to us, let alone on people looking in. So they become silent. Those initiations and those experiences, they're silenced. People are like, oh shit, I don't know what to do with that. Keep her quiet. Um, and look,
Yeah.
sometimes it is under the guise of care, isn't it? Right? Like, and I'm,
Yeah.
that's true. But ultimately, it's containment. It's a, like when we pathologize women, it's often not illness we're pathologizing. It is that waking up. It's that
Mhm.
arriving. It's us arriving in a body. It's us arriving in our power and our magic much faster than we know how to hold without the rites, without the rituals to support us.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in this culture of patriarchy where
Mm.
people, the world around us wants us to like function, the same every day of the week and
Right?
just be even keeled and only certain emotions and certain ways of being are acceptable. And I remember for me, even just like when I started my bleed and I was having these heavy cycles and I did, my mom said, took me to the doctor and then they prescribed oral contraception. Even I wasn't
Right?
having sex and and that was just my body was speaking to me and I needed to like
Yeah.
attune with her, not suppress her hormones and change the way she was physiologically working.
I mean, I've got PCO. They diagnose PCOS. They diagnose
Mhm.
endometriosis in this body, and their answer was whip it out. I was like, sorry, what? Like we're just going to whip it out, and I'm like, but. And at the time, I was in my early 20s, and at that time, I didn't know the difference between uterus and like womb, right? So they were using those words interchangeably. I didn't know the difference, and so if I didn't, and I was aware. So I went away and I had to think, I was like, oh, there's something not quite right here. I didn't know. Like, we're not all blessed with this kind of knowledge. And of course, like, we're not always taught it. Like I say, I come from a family of women of magic, but like, I don't come from a family of women who knew about gynecological situations.
Uh-huh.
And so everything from then became my own journey with that. Everything, and it did become it became my spiritual path, like my womb, the magic that's held there, my period, like it just become this whole rhythmic intelligence that I was like, oh, and it connected me back in. But if you haven't got the support for that, if you haven't got the 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 knowledge of any rites and rituals regarding that, then of
Mhm.
course that's going to be so scary. Of course, if a person you've been told, we're told that these doctors know the best, like have got our best interests at heart. We're told those things, right? You work for a medical profession, like it's like there is so much there is so much good care available, and there is also so much not knowing. There's all like where people don't know.
Yes.
And
Yes,
that
we're
is the
not
world we currently live in.
Yeah, we're not taught about our own bodies and our cycles and our rhythms and how to
Yeah.
work with them and notice like, oh, in this time of my cycle, I feel like I want to do all these things and be out there and create. And then, oh, in this other time, I want to just like sit in bed and read a book. And they're all
Like the
important.
permission slip that gave me when I learned that about myself. And that was like not until it was early 20. I'm blessed that I've had a lot of my bleeding years with awareness so that I'm not going to go into menopause skidding on my knees like so many women do, right? Like not
Mhm.
knowing. I'm blessed. And
Yes.
that's why I had to share Code Red. It's why I've had to write the books that I've written about that because I'm like, I am no expert. Know that. Know that. But I am on this journey and this is how it's been for me. And I feel like if we understood some of this, it's a permission slip for all of us just to at least experience it a little bit differently.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
mean, tell me what you think. So this is interesting to me at the minute
Yeah.
about perimenopause. Like, what's your thoughts and feels as somebody in that arena that knows about women's health, but also knows about the death and rebirth cycles and all of the good stuff.
Yes. Yes. So I've gathered 43 years here now in this earthly realm in this body. And I have just,
Congratulations, us, for
yeah,
that in our being in our 40s. I love that.
yes,
Mm.
yes. So for me, yes, learned about my cycle and then have been, tracking it and aware and living more in alignment with her since
Yeah.
my 20s. And now here I am in my early 40s, and I can feel how she's starting to shift. And like my bleed was, I expected it to come a few days
Mm.
ago, closer to the new moon, and
Right.
she still hasn't arrived, but I can feel the sensations of my womb and that my bleed will come. But it's
Yeah.
been interesting to start experience this sort of like lengthening and irregularity of my
Mm.
cycle in a way that I didn't have.
Right.
And I am feeling, yeah, gratitude and joy to be at this stage in my life and where there is more awareness about perimenopause and
Mm.
menopause and just acknowledging, noticing, honoring this shift that is taking place within my body as I'm like feeling attracted to different foods and feeling the
Mm.
heat and
Right.
shifting sometimes. And like my husband's like, I also have a hot Viking husband that I
Yay for the
called
hot
in.
Viking.
I did a 40-day ritual and he met me on the 40th day on summer solstice and
Oh,
proposed
what a
2 weeks later.
joy.
And we married 4 months later. And it was just like magic.
Oh my God,
So,
I love that. More of those stories, please. Thank
but
you. When a world
yeah.
is burning, we want those stories. Thank you very much.
And he's so sweet and he like looks at he has an app where he also is in alignment knowing when my cycle is.
Awesome.
And but also there's like this, oh, he's like, oh my gosh, so I've just like, he feels like he's just gotten the handle on my, we've been together for a decade now,
Amazing.
of my rhythms and how I am in the different phases of my cycle. And he's like, oh, and now everything's like changing again. I'm like, yeah, us women, we're all
Welcome to my world. I love
yeah.
it. I think it's really I love hearing your experience of that changing because I'm also like so I love like talking when we're talking in real terms like we're just doing here
Hmm.
that fills my heart. My concern is that it's just another thing that's being like commodified about women and so like we're told how it's going to be and I'm like no, like you've had your like if you've been charting your cycle, you just check that beautiful premenstrual phase and recognize like that part of yourself is coming online now. So yeah, that tongue might be a bit sharper. Yeah, like there might be you might give a few less fucks about a few less things. And that's cool. But you're gonna get but what you do give it, give your attention to will be really important now. Like there'll be less um pleasing. And I'm just thinking that so I've recognized that there's a little bit of commodification going on. Like there's a lot of pastel. There's a lot of pastel involved in perimenopause, I've noticed. I'm like, that's not how it is for me. But in the
Yeah.
products that they're creating and stuff, I'm like, are we sure?
Yes, I do feel I definitely feel a little bit, I don't know if repulsed is the right word, but the way
It's a
that
good one.
yes, now they're marketing products and things
Yeah.
and acting like, again, just like when I was younger, it was like my bleeding cycle was a bad thing and I needed to like band-aid it and pretend it didn't
Right.
exist and it was
Yeah, you must
wrong.
be able to roller skate backwards.
And now it feels like that's what's happening to perimenopause and menopause, that this is like something that has to be like
Yeah.
medicated and solved.
Uh-huh.
And yet it's not, it's just this next flow of our lives and our bodies. And it's perfect and magical. I love Clarissa Pinkola SD. She talks about the how in Joyous Body, the spoken series, she speaks
Mm.
to menopause as like this rerouting of our blood flow, and the blood is rerouted and we no longer like
Mm.
shed the blood. And so then we have this vital force that remains within us in a new way, and how there's three different like ways of our circulatory system works as women when we're young and we're not bleeding, and then we are bleeding, and then we're not bleeding again. And yeah, more of that.
More of that. It's so true, isn't it? And I just think, like I said, you can either go skidding into it because you've not been prepared, you've not had those. I'm not saying there has to be like spiritual rites of passage either, but like some recognition of ritual about, oh, this is who, like, and also the enjoyment of this process here. Like we forget to share, like I'll call it charmed and dangerous because it is when we're most magical and it's when we're most dangerous because like we really do like clear. Yeah, it's a clear, it's like that premenstrual phase when we're like and it's just gorgeous. Well, for me, as someone that's recognizing, I haven't recognized the change in my actual bleed yet, but recognize that's still very, and I'm always side-eyeing it. I'm like, it's going to kick in a minute. But also own, and I'm only doing that because that's what I'm being told I'm meant to be doing. Like it's meant to be irregular now. It couldn't. My mum wasn't. My mum was like regular right up. And so this is what I mean is the stories we're told. Like I love other women's stories. That's how we're going to learn. And that's how we have to remember that we learn from each other's stories, not from what we're told.
Yes. And just like
Very
even us
different.
sharing our two stories, that mine
Right?
has started becoming a little irregular and yours isn't, like that there's this spectrum of possibility. And just because you're not how the textbook says it's going to be doesn't
Well, and
mean
that's what I
you're
feel
going to
like
come
as
out.
well, even sharing about rhythmic, even sharing about like the four phases of our cycle and how they may match the seasons and all of those things. These I don't want them to ever become like doctrines or dogma, or to become things that people then think, but I'm not like that in that phase. So does that mean it's wrong? Like you were saying, oh, now my period's this long, or now my cycle's this long and my bleed is this long. Like each has its own like medicine. And so
Mhm.
sometimes there might be something wrong, but other times you might be bleeding 3 days because that's all that needs to happen. And I think that's the bit, and if we trust ourselves, like if we can trust that intuitive hit, like, what is this cool? Is something up? Versus like, oh, this must be it. This is the truth. There's only one way. Like all these truths can sit next to each other. And I think that's the bit I'm learning in this phase of what my people I mean I don't even like the term, I'm not going to lie to you. Perimenopause is so like again it comes down to that medical like it's like so in
Uh-huh.
my charmed
Yeah.
and dangerous phase I'll call it, but like
Charmed
the
and dangerous. I love that. I think I might
yeah,
embrace
I
that
wrote about it
well.
in code red and it's sort of I was like, and I've actually been looking forward to getting to that phase and people have been like, well, are you going to write about that? And I was like, oh yeah, I know, but I'm in it too much right now, I'm enjoying it too much.
That's because how we call something matters. How we name
It really
something,
does.
it
It
matters.
goes back to what you said at the beginning about witch. It's like how we choose to take it on
Yes.
is important. So, and how we roll it around our tongue, those words, even like when you say witch, like you say, some people say it with such a spit because it's so because they're so either scared of it or they want you to be scared of it.
Right.
Versus like perimenopause, are you joking? Like, ooh, it just feels so like brilliant. I'd love it. I'd love to experience that, please. Thank you. What? And then that's
Yeah.
just going to take me to menopause when people will forget who I am because that's what they've told me is going to happen. No. That's literally why I wrote the book. I was like, nah, not happening, not happening. We are going to move through all of these phases and enjoy every single one of them.
Yes, I'm so glad the world needs all your books. I love
Oh,
it.
well, bless you. Thank you. But I just think this is so, it's such a juicy subject when we're talking about like rhythms and understanding. I know that not everyone bleeds, but if you do, and you've been taught not to love on it, or at least not to understand it, or to let it kind of show you stuff about, like, for me, it's
Mhm.
just been the best intel about my body, about how I show up, what it needs. Like, I know she, like you say, your partner recognizes that in each phase you need something different. Slightly, we all
Mhm.
need something different in each phase. And when you can trust your body, like I'm like, oh, yeah, she loves that here, but she don't love that there. I want that
Yeah, and so
breakfast.
much can
I want that breakfast like that. I want you to touch me like that, but don't you touch me now. Like it's all of the it's like the whole spectrum.
yeah, so much can be revealed to us when we take time to like be with our own body, our cycle, and ask her, like, what are you wanting to
Mm.
share with me? Yeah. I'm
And I'm
noticing
just
my like
excited.
red cheeks that like we
Yes.
talked about in the beginning. I'm all rosy. And I'm noticing the time.
Okay, cool.
And
Yes.
so I want to get to a little bit of talk about grief. So in the
Oh, okay.
self-sorcery book, you talk about significance of wells. And I love the term that you use, like the well of grief.
Mm.
And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about wells and the significance of them. I know you tell stories about going to see certain wells and the ones on the Rose Line, and also about the gifts of the darkness, but also how we should avoid building our home in the darkness. Touch on that a little bit.
Oh, well, I mean, there's so many parts, isn't there? Wells, I would say are like if wherever there's a well, like we were talking about, like when they've taken our rituals, they've taken our power. But when you find a well, you remember that that spot is there's power because it's a source. So it's a water source, and so when there's a water source and connectivity to the earth through down into the earth, she's a power source. And so you find them like the one in Chart in I don't know how to say it. Chart. The big beautiful church in France. In the under if you go into there's a beautiful well downstairs, and then there's this beautiful Black Madonna, and then there's this beautiful crypt, and it's like you have to go down to get the magic, right? And it's the same in Glastonbury when you go into the little church that's got no roof, but if you go in and you go down, and that's always the message I get. And it's like, I always feel like it's such a scorpionic thing. It's like anywhere I go is like, make sure you come in, make sure you come down. And it's the same in our bodies. It's like, come in, come down. And that's when we can really like root into our magic and our power. So I think that's one aspect of it. So yes, Wells. Wells as grief is that we, so where to start with grief?
If you want, you could maybe talk about like, so my initiation into
hmm,
grief
tell me.
was I was 25 years old, and my first love, Bjorn, he had cancer, and I was
Hmm.
there with him when he died. And it was my
And what
first
age were
time.
you?
I was 25 and he was
Right.
26.
Oh,
And it was such an interesting time, and definitely it's this like, into the depths where I thought I was never gonna like see the light again,
right.
never be happy again, never love again. And at a time when most of my peers weren't really facing death in that like experiential way that I did, witnessing that like last breath in his body with. And so for me, that was the thing that really brought me into the realm of grief, and also into having that rite of passage going down and back up, which is then may when I've now faced grief in other times, like my first baby also died, and I was like, just this. But I knew because of my experience with him that I would move through it, that there would be joy and beauty on the other side. But that first time, it felt like I was lost down there for a moment. And it took me some time to rise up into the light again.
And that's it, right? It's just that we can hear that story in someone and we can be like, well, my story isn't like that. And you're like, but everyone's experience will always be different.
Yeah.
Everyone's experience will, oh, entry point, the time that they spend there will always be different. And yeah, well, thank you for sharing first and foremost. And I think a little bit scorpionic, right? We we are called. I feel like there's so many people in the line of work that you're in, but also that have experienced such depths of darkness.
Mhm.
Um, and happen to be Scorpios as well. I don't think it's a coincidence. Um, and so this lifetime, plenty. So when everyone talks to me, I mean, I never know where to start personally, but I'd say the darkest was that my dad died. Then my mum died 6 months, I mean, 6 weeks, sorry, later. And then in the course of the following year, so in 12-month period, 13 other members of my family died. And so it got to a point that I didn't know who I was grieving for. And
Mm,
so I just stopped feeling, um, because nobody's body can handle that amount of grief, that I was being asked to hold.
mhm,
So I know what disassociation is. I also know, like, intimately, and I believe that's why we've been initiated that way. So many of us have been initiated through the dark, so that we know how to hold space for those that do not know what to do here.
mhm,
Um, and I write in Venus, which is this beautiful pink book, but actually there's just a big part of it is about how the Venus cycle for me has been like one of the ways in which I was able to um, actively sit with that grief in a contained way. Um, because the rhythm of Venus means that she starts in the morning sky, the actual planet. You see her in the morning sky, and then she's on the descent straight away. She goes into the underworld. There is a phase when she is in the underworld, and this replicates stories throughout myth and time. Um,
like in
and
Nana, right? Mhm,
right, yeah, exactly. Persephone. There's so many versions of this story of the descent. So, that's that whole kind of call it in and down. And then so it's almost like a contained period of time, when Venus is in the underworld, and it was where I met what I call Ma of the Dark Matter, who I call Ma of the Dark Matter.
mhm,
And it's like this beautiful mother energy. But I say in the book, like, you want her because when you're in the dark and you're so desperate, there's such a desperation for wanting to either get out really quickly or to stay there forever because nothing's worth anything else anymore anyway. Yet when you're with her, so part of you wants her to really stroke your head, like to stroke your hair, and for you to be able to curl up, and for her to just like go, it's okay, it's okay. She's not that. Mara of the Dark Matter is not that. Um, and so there's this phase, and we're in it now. Actually, Venus is in the underworld right now. Um, and I'm cycling with a group of 60 women, and we're working through that underworld phase because it's where we get to practice how to see here, how to be with grief without being consumed by it, so that we get to feel it. And like she will strip away anything, any of the stories, any of the things that we think we should be doing, like performative or otherwise, and just get to, like, literally to the heart of what matters. And that's what happens when Venus is in the underworld. She goes into the heart of the sun, right? So it's like this is the deepest, darkest point is when she's behind the sun and she's in the heart of the sun. And so she's furthest from Earth at this point. And so we feel furthest away and we have to be with ourselves. And for me, that was just one of the most beautiful recognitions, that like to go like on with Inanna into the underworld, to be stripped of everything we thought we were, to sit in this contained space, and then to know that there is an ascent, right? So because we can get so caught up in the, like, I could happily have built my house in the darkness. I could. Like, I'm quite comfy there. Like, I'm quite, whether that's a good or a bad thing, I'm quite comfy in the
mhm,
dark spaces. But actually, I realized I was missing out on so much of life. I turned quite cynical. I turned quite hard. Um, like, my heart got a little armor around it, even though I'm blessed to be loved on really hard. Um, unless I could do that for myself. It was much easier to just like keep everyone at bay. Like, I thought, if I let anyone close, they're going to die too. And so I really got stuck in that spot. And so actually being able to have a contained time space of like to know that for this couple of months, I can really be with this grief. I can understand what that is
Mhm.
and know that like Venus, when I see her in the evening sky, so she's no longer the morning star Venus, she becomes this evening star Venus that we get to see in the sky. She's on the ascent, and so am I, and so are we. And that's why I think the Venus cycle is just so beautiful for it's a beautiful thing because it's about art, it's about love, it's about beauty, it's about pleasure. It shows up all of the things we need more of in our lives. Um, and it also strips us of all the things that we don't need. It strips us of all
Mhm.
the things we've been told we must be, who, like the stories, the identities, so that we can be with Mara the dark matter, understand exactly what does matter, grieve. Like I say, she'll hold you. She'll hold a beautiful mirror, black obsidian probably, up to what's going on, so you can really see it. So you really have to feel it, um, and she'll also show you the way out. She'll also show you
Mhm.
that there's like, because she's going to ascend, so there's going to be this beautiful ascension, and and you get to do that. And it's beautiful. And then for me, a Venus is beautiful because it's like a 19-month cycle. So there's stretchy, it's there's a lot of space in which for us to experience all of those things versus like when we look at the moon cycle, which is this beautiful 28-day cycle. But, having these different cycles to work with and to help us through those things
Mhm.
well, it was definitely a game changer for me.
Yeah, and for me, it was interesting to, as I like came out of the depths of that initiatory
Mm,
experience of grief, I
mm.
realized that I had this like vigor for life and for
Yes.
loving people and this
Yes.
like next level ability to rise into like the joy
Mm.
and elation that I
Yeah.
didn't somehow I couldn't access before I had taken that dive.
So true. And if we can give ourselves that time, because it's so easy sometimes to be like, absolutely not going to touch it, not going to feel it, not going to be there, don't want to be with it. But without, like you say now, like I had that like armor around my heart, but now I can love so big and not let like the world's like the world is worlding outside and like, I can still love big because both things are happening at exactly the same time now. Both can be true. Like that world is not, the world is worlding and I am loving, and both
Mhm.
things are true. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, as we close here, I'm wondering if you could just answer one more question for me.
Yeah, of course. Well, I say, of course. Let's
Yeah.
see. Let's see if I can.
I love to ask people about the word soul and what soul
Mm.
means to them because
Oh,
people
nice.
often have different definitions.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I think it's in that bit where I don't know, like it's that the bit where in us that speaks through our dreams, like through sensation, the bit that's not, yeah, it was the bit I mentioned earlier, but it's the bit that has no interest in logic. It's actually much more about the felt sensation of your true self. What do you really desire? What do you really long for? Like, what does your heart really want to experience? And it gets to do that through your soul in motion, I think. And look, that is a thing because I also think our soul doesn't have the same language as us. Like I don't think it has the same, like trying to put words on it is almost trying to capture an essence that is uncapturable. And so it's why sometimes when I write, it's like easier than speaking. Yet then there's also some things that are only felt because there's just not words for them. And I think because I have to think about this one is that our soul is that
Yeah,
the one that there's not
beautiful.
always words for, but it's so
Absolutely.
felt.
The
Yeah,
the ineffable. Yeah.
yeah, Beautiful word, actually. We'll
Yes.
take that one. That's one of my favorites, so we'll take that one.
Yes. Well, Lisa, I am just so honored and thank you so much for your
Oh,
time
pleasure.
and these
Pleasure.
stories. And I'll put links in the show notes below, but will you please speak and tell people where they can find you and
Yes,
with the ways they can work with you? Yeah.
of course. So I have a website, lisalister.com. I have Instagram, because I'm that age, which is at Sassy Lisa Lister. And I have a Patreon community, which I love, and it's called the She Power Collective. And it's where we just are women in process and in progress, right? It's just like, it's a salon, it's rituals, it's riffs, it's just women doing women stuff, and it's gorgeous, and I'm very blessed that I get to be in circle that way, because I'd love to be doing it in person on the daily, but if we can't do that, then holding an online space is our next best thing. But yes,
Yeah.
so website, Instagram, Patreon, She Power Collective.
The books. And you said you
Written
have a
some books,
Substack.
written some books, have a Substack. I mean, there's lots of ways, but
Yeah,
yeah. But
so
thank you.
many.
Thank
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in and choosing to spend time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of The Heart of the Soul. I would truly appreciate if you might choose to leave a rating, review, or share the show with someone that you know. You can support this podcast by donating to it using the PayPal or Venmo links. If you have stories that you would like to share on The Heart of the Soul, please send me an email through my website. I would love to hear from you. If you would like to work with me, I have both one-on-one and group offerings, online and in person. Find out more on my website, birthingnova.love. If you're listening on Spotify, you can now even send me a voice message. Until next time, remember, be brave, be love, be wild, be you, because you are the only you, and be the change that you seek for yourself and for the generations to come. Sending each of you so much love. Love, love, love. Mwah.